The question is that the motion be agreed to. Call Adrian Arafi.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise to take call on the third reading of the Gambling Amendment Bill number 3. Sir, can I summarise our Labour position on this bill? There were, at first reading, there were some things that we had great concern about, and there were things that we fully supported. I think the passage of this legislation, and we genuinely sat in the Government Administration Committee through that process to try to make this bill the best that it can be. And on balance, we came to the conclusion that there was more good in this bill than our other concerns, and so I stand here to support this bill in its third reading. I want to acknowledge the Minister for bringing this all together. I want to also acknowledge him because the key major issue that we had with this bill was around removing the prohibition on commission-based payments for venues, sir. And that issue, and there were a number of submitters on that particular issue, and we heard very clearly what they were. I want to thank the Minister because during the committee stage, he made it quite clear that the model that they will end up under the regulation that this bill sets out to put in place will not incentivise gambling. We will closely monitor that, but I want to thank the Minister for making that statement in the House. Also, kind of reinforces that by reviewing Class 4 gambling, so I do want to acknowledge that as well. So, sir, yes, the commission-based payments, yeah. As I said, we did have concerns around that. It could actually incentivise gambling in those venues. And for a moment too, I want to talk about two particular submitters. I won't give their names, but they shared their journey through addiction to gambling, and it was very humbling to hear them tell their story and also to share that information with us, because I think it helped us not only understand their situation, but to keep that in our minds while we were making decisions around and recommendations to changes to this bill. The transparency issue, so that was another issue that members of the public talked about, and people within the gambling sector. They were very concerned about one particular area around conflict of interest and what that actually meant. So from a number of submitters' view, they highlighted the fact that if this particular clause were to stay unchanged, then basically all of their workers would not be able to be paid. I think we came up at the Select Committee with a very good solution to that that seems to have satisfied everyone. So we're very pleased that that particular clause has been able to be included into that and is no longer an issue. I want to go back to the original intent of the Principal Act. Sorry, at the time that it was passed by the Labour government, the reason why that there was a prohibition on commission payment and that it would be on a cost recovery basis was that the true benefit of this the gambling sector, Class 4 gambling, was that profits would be distributed to communities. And that was the basis of having cost recovery rather than having commission payment. As we all know, there has been a number of issues along the way around both the distribution of funds. For example, as was highlighted by one of my colleagues, Jenny Salesa, in her electorate in South Auckland and East and Manukau East, there are a number of gambling venues there, but when you see where the funds are distributed, they are not distributed totally within her community. So this bill brings greater transparency around the distribution of those funds so that they stay within the community that they are collected from. And that's a good thing, because that was the original intent of the Principal Act. I go back to the joining up those the issue around the original intent of the bill to make certain that those as much funds as possible can be distributed into the communities. This bill, and I've seen the modelling, potentially means that an additional approximately $10 million will be distributed to communities, and that's a really good thing, and that's another reason why we are supporting this bill. Notwithstanding, and if I can summarise our position, that notwithstanding our concerns, which I think have been greatly addressed since the committee stage, but we will still be watching very closely to see what the venue payment model ends up being. I think it's important also to note that a number of submitters were disappointed that not more harm minimisation was included in this particular bill, and there were a number of submitters that I have mentioned in earlier readings that promoted the idea of a pre-commitment system for gambling, which we certainly hope becomes part of the Minister's review into Class 4 gambling, because I think that's a very important issue, that we ensure that we put every possible mechanism in place to ensure that the harm caused by gambling can be minimised. And this seems to me the most effective way of doing it for Class 4 gambling, that gamblers have to pre-commit to a set amount of money that they are willing to use or to spend in Class 4 gambling, and some are also advocating a maximum amount of money and a maximum amount of time that is loaded into the card. The technology, as I understand it, already exists for that to happen, and so we would be hoping that in future review, any legislation that comes from that review would include those sort of measures. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I'm pleased to take this call in the third reading of the Gambling Amendment Bill, and I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora.